Fortnite maybe made the biggest change it's ever made for controllers today, and just completely revamping the sensitivities and settings for how you use your controller. You might be thinking that it's really overwhelming because, guys, it's taken me like 4 hours, maybe even 4.5 hours to even kind of get a good grasp of what to do with these new settings, and it looks like it's going to take the pros a little bit of a while too, especially with the new ability for linear settings versus exponential. I'll explain what that means in a bit, so don't worry, but we're going to be hopping right into it, and I'm going to take you guys through all the way from the start and what you should be doing. There's no best setting out yet because honestly there hasn't been enough time to really test out all these different settings, but I'm going to explain to you guys what all these different settings do and which ones I think you should be using, at least to start off, or at least be monitoring, so maybe you can toggle things to better fit your playstyle. So let's get right into it. Oh, and guys, to celebrate the changes for controllers, I will be doing a SCUF giveaway, so make sure you comment with your platform down below, and I'll be choosing one person to get a SCUF controller in this giveaway. So hopping into the settings, you guys are gonna notice this is much the same, but whenever you come on over here, you're gonna notice that this stuff is grayed out. Your old sensitivities for your controller completely grayed out, and you can't even toggle those anymore. So you're gonna have to go one more tab over, and this is where you see the new sensitivity screen. And right here it just goes 4:4 for normal, and these are the basic controls. So Epic gives these as the basic. If you don't want to go into advanced and you just want your controller kind of to be similar to what it was before, you could kind of toggle this. Let's say you were on 7.7 sends, you can move this to 7.7, and then you can move your build sends and your edit sends to whatever they were before. However, this really, I wouldn't recommend doing the basic sensitivity, because the reason they did this change is so that we can have a little bit more customization whenever we're playing the game. So let me show you guys first off. Whenever you try to do advanced, it's going to give you a warning. You just have to confirm that. But coming down here, guys, you're going to notice there's one thing you need to do right away. Copy from legacy. It's all the way at the bottom. This is going to give you all the settings that you originally had. So like over here, if you have your sensitivity and your settings that you were used to before this change, you're going to want to go over to legacy and just absolutely copy that. So now you're going to notice how all of these values changed for me already. So 2.0 build sensitivity, it copied that. It copied my 1.8 on my edit. That's perfect. Exactly what I wanted. And look right here. So the look horizontal speed is now 50%. The look vertical speed is now 59%. Whereas like I was playing on a 0.72, 0.71. So that just goes to show you guys that these values are going to be different than you think. So don't just think that, you know, I played on 0.7, so maybe I'll just go to 70%. Do the legacy controls to kind of copy what you were using sensitivity wise. But now let's get into some of the more complicated stuff. And also I want to point out to you guys, they made it so you can go all the way up to 5.0 with edit mode and build mode sensitivity. I highly recommend you don't use that because, I mean, yeah, just it's pretty self-explanatory. And I want to explain the horizontal boost and the vertical boost because this is something completely new to me, and I know it's new to a lot of you guys as well. So let's say we move this up to 16, which is kind of the recommended level that they have here in the game. Let me show you what this does. So as you can read from here right now, it says an additional left to right rotation speed applied when the controller's look stick is fully deflected. So what that means in practicality, and let me actually boost that up to 100% just to show you guys exactly what this does. You can see it even better when it's all the way up. So when I'm using my controller stick right here, my little look stick, and I'm like turning it, you see I slowly turn, I'm barely touching the stick, but if I push the stick all the way to the left, that's when you see that just dramatic increase in speed. So what it does is you can more accurately control like just going side to side, but like let's say somebody shoots you from behind and you want to turn around really quickly, that's where that boost comes in. So if you want to be able to like boost your way right to left, you'll be able to do that with that setting right there. And obviously 100% is a little much, but something that I've been settling with is right around, let me check just to be absolutely sure here, is right around like 7%, 10 to 7% seems to be like the best for me, because you don't want it to be too dramatic, especially when you get in those intense shotgun fights. You got to be able to accurately hip fire as well. But yeah, right around 7% seems to be really good for me. And another thing I changed, a couple pros I've seen have had 0.20 on the turning boost ramp time, but I actually turned this down to 0 seconds. So what this does is it just decreases the time it takes for this to kick in. So the second I put my stick all the way to the left, if I have it on 0.00, it'll go to that max speed right away, which I actually like because I feel like it helps me control it better. But again, I recommend you guys just use your personal preference here. Try out different values. Let me show you guys what this really means too. So you can go all the way up to 1.0 seconds. This is going to show you guys what this does. So again, when I move the stick to the right, you can see it goes a little slow. When I go all the way over, it doesn't boost until 1 second after I push all the way to the right. Then you get the boost, but it won't do that until you go 1 second all the way boosting. So it's just a neat little thing, and I think having it down on 0.00 is actually the best possible thing because it's a lot more reactive to what you're actually doing and you have more control. And then instant boost when building, it defaults to on, but I highly recommend you guys have that on. What it does is it applies your instant boost. It applies that in build mode too, which is really useful as I was showing you guys whenever you're doing stuff like this as well. So if you're trying to, let's say you get shot and you're trying to box up really quickly, you're gonna be able to box up even faster with that instant boost because it even adds on to your build sensitivity. Okay, now getting into more of the interesting stuff, we have aim down sights, the ADS sensitivity, and you might want to keep this just as it is, but for me, I actually toggled it a little bit and found stuff that I liked, and I'll kind of explain what I did. So first off, I upped the horizontal speed just a little bit to 17%. That just felt better to me. These two values, the horizontal and the vertical speed, should be pretty personal to you. It's whatever you're more comfortable with, but I found these values to be pretty good for like tracking at the speed that somebody runs. Like these values have been pretty good for that type of deal. So I recommend that you guys use values similar to that. Don't go too high. I've seen like pretty much everybody using low sensitivities on the ADS. But one thing I would recommend is turning on the ADS horizontal boost. And the reason for this, let me pick up a sniper or like a scoped weapon and show you guys. So whenever you're using scoped weapons, they don't move too quickly, especially when you're in the game and you get a little bit of aim assist. But if you put on the boost, it actually helps a lot. If you put that down to 0, like we talked about with the other one, and then the value I've been using is like 13%, and that way you can more accurately go between targets. So what I mean by that is like, let's say you're not using your stick, you're not pushing your stick all the way to the right or left, and you're tracking someone like this. Let's say you eliminate that person right there, and you want to go, like, let's say there's somebody right here, and you want to drag your aim over that way. Typically, you'd have to like go slow like that, whatever your ADS sensitivity is. But when you have that boost, you can just push the stick all the way to the right and get over there a lot quicker. And then when you have aim assist as well, it's gonna be a lot easier to actually lock onto those targets and hit shots more accurately. So again, this is another setting that's entirely up to you guys. I don't know if it's the best setting, but just when I've been using it today, I've liked it over the last 4 hours because it helps like ADSing between targets. But another thing, if you don't have it, I just recommend you ADS, you shoot the target. When you go over here, you zoom out, and then you go over. So both options are good. Do whatever you're more comfortable with, and make sure you try it out in the new Combine game mode if you're really curious. At the very bottom of these new settings, you're going to see maybe the most important category out of all of this stuff, and it can be really easy to overlook, especially if you're working with all the other settings, because there really is a lot. But I recommend you turn look dampening time down to like 0.12. I've seen some people using, but also I had it all the way down at 0. So what this does is it's very similar to your boost ramp time for ADS and your ramp time for turning as well. And what it does is when you're looking, it gets rid of that little bit of delay. If you put it all the way on 0.00 seconds, you're gonna notice the second I hit my controller and turn, I turn at the speed that I'm like trying to go with my turn. Whereas if you turn up that dampening time, and let me turn it up all the way up to 1.0 so you guys can kind of get an idea. You'll see how dramatic this is and why it's better to have it lower. So now look, if I hit the stick, it takes a while to get that speed going. It takes a while to get that same speed that I was using earlier when it was on like 0.00. So the reason I like this is because it's very similar to your dead zones, where it just gives you more control. You can get to the speed you're trying to go sooner, and it's a lot quicker. So let me just show you guys real quick. that your dead zones, you do with these updates, want your dead zones to be as low as possible. And I would recommend anywhere from 0.15 down to like what I'm at, like 0.08. Although you might get some drift if you go a little bit lower than that. I would recommend having low as possible dead zones on your sticks. Just real quick before I explain the look input curve, which might be the most complicated thing for this entire video, I want to get into aim assist strength should just stay at 100%. You definitely should not toggle that. You want your aim assist to be as much as possible. If you go any lower than that, GG's, but you know, 100% is going to be what like the majority of players use, and I don't really understand why anybody would go less than that. That's what really helps controller players aim better. But also you have this option to use legacy look controls. So if you don't even want to deal with any of this stuff, I would just copy from legacy and then use your legacy look controls as well. But the point of this video is to explain these new settings. So if you just want to use your old stuff, you can do that as well. I just want you to know that that's an option. But let's just talk real quick about linear versus exponential on your sensitivity. So this is probably the most complicated thing. Took me a while to figure this out, but exponential is what the game has always used. And what that means is like, it's the curve on your stick sensitivity and your look sensitivity. It's the curve. So like whenever you're moving, it moves exponentially. So it starts off with moving and responding to your movement slower. I'm trying to put this into terms that like everybody's gonna be able to understand. So like, whenever you start off and you barely move your stick, it's going to go slower. But as you move your stick more, it's going to start going faster at a faster rate. Whereas linear, we'll explain linear real quick. What linear does is it has a different curve for the sensitivity. So as you move left, it's going to move a little bit quicker. You're getting the raw input from your stick. So like the harder you move your stick, the faster it's going to go. And the shorter you do, it goes in a response on a curve like this, whereas exponential goes like this. So it's very consistent. And I actually really like linear. I'm just not good with it yet. So, and let me show you guys, if you want to try out linear, I'm not going to get too much into it because as of right now, like no pros are using it and they really haven't even been trying it out. If you want to try linear, I recommend, first of all, lowering your build and your edit mode sensitivity and your look speed and all of that. Like, it just feels like insanely fast on linear because I'm getting exactly the input that I'm putting into my stick. So I wouldn't recommend doing linear and keeping those same settings that we talked about earlier. Like if you're using your legacy settings, you're going to have to lower your horizontal speed. The speed that I found to work for me was 35. It was 35, and then I had like the horizontal boost all the way up to like 25 as well. And then with legacy, I had my ADS down to like 13% and my vertical down to like 13 as well. It's basically when you're on linear, guys, you have a lot more control. It feels great, but you get less aim assist. That's what it feels like. So exponential goes really slow when you're on targets. You feel like you get better aim assist. So that's the difference between exponential and linear. I would recommend using exponential for now, just so it feels familiar, but definitely give linear a try. And I'm going to be really curious to see like if any other pros start to use linear coming up here in the near future.